A brand new home should be the easiest house in America to sell. Fresh paint, a builder warranty, and nobody's ever lived there, so why are thousands of them sitting completely empty? Across California, that assumption is quietly falling apart. Entire master-planned communities have opened with beautifully staged model homes and finished streets, yet builders are watching brand new houses sit unsold while offering bigger and bigger incentives just to bring buyers through the door. Nationwide, finished unsold new homes have climbed to roughly 124,000 by early 2026, the highest level since the years after the 2008 housing crash. Builders are now cutting mortgage rates, paying buyers closing costs, and throwing in upgrades worth tens of thousands of dollars just to clear inventory. And nowhere is this shift more visible than California. Today, we're counting down 15 California suburbs where brand new homes are piling up in 2026, ranked by falling prices, rising inventory, and the growing pressure on builders to make a sale. If you already own a home in one of these communities, this could explain why nearby sales suddenly look so unpredictable. And if you're planning to buy, these may be the places where builders have the strongest reason to negotiate. One quick note before we begin, some of the numbers have changed since this story first started making the rounds online, so every location in this countdown uses the freshest data we could verify. And the suburb at number 15 is already showing warning signs most buyers still haven't noticed. Wildomar has lived through nearly every phase of California's modern housing story. The city was incorporated in 2008, just as the housing market collapsed, forcing it to begin its life surrounded by foreclosures instead of growth. When the market finally recovered, everything changed. Developers flooded back into Riverside County, transforming open land along Interstate 15 into neighborhood after neighborhood for families priced out of Orange County, San Diego, and Los Angeles. For years, that formula worked almost perfectly because prices kept climbing. But today, Zillow estimates the typical Wildomar home is worth about $612,000, down roughly 3.7% from a year ago, a small decline that hints at a much bigger shift underneath. On paper, the market still looks healthy because well-priced homes can go pending in around 10 days, but speed isn't telling the whole story anymore, as buyers push back on yesterday's prices while newly built homes compete directly with recent resale listings. That's a battle most homeowners simply can't win. Builders can lower your mortgage rate, pay your closing costs, and include thousands of dollars in upgrades, advantages that individual sellers rarely have the budget to match. Wildomar still benefits from its location between Lake Elsinore and Murrieta, along with easy freeway access and expanding retail. But the suburb depends heavily on buyers willing to trade a longer commute for affordability, and that equation becomes much harder when coastal markets begin cooling again. For decades, Santa Clarita has been one of Los Angeles County's greatest suburban success stories, top-rated schools, master-planned neighborhoods, and a commute that kept families connected to LA, without living in the middle of it, made the city one of Southern California's biggest winners. Communities like Valencia, Saugus, Canyon Country, and Newhall transformed what were once quiet towns into one of the region's most desirable suburban destinations. Year after year, new families kept arriving, and developers struggled to build fast enough to keep up. Now that growth is reaching a completely different stage, the 5-point Valencia master plan alone is expected to deliver more than 20,000 homes, with new neighborhoods opening even while entire sections remain under construction. In a booming market, that amount of construction might have disappeared almost overnight. Instead, thousands of brand new homes are arriving just as demand begins to cool. And Zillow now estimates the typical Santa Clarita home is worth about $770,000, down roughly 3.7% over the past year, with Saugus and Newhall weakening even faster. That leaves existing homeowners competing against something they simply can't match. Builders can reduce mortgage rates, pay closing costs, and include premium upgrades worth thousands of dollars, advantages that make brand new homes far more attractive than nearby resale listings. Santa Clarita still has powerful long-term advantages, from Six Flags Magic Mountain and Henry Mayo Newhall Hospital to one of the inland region's most diverse local economies. But even the strongest suburban markets become more competitive when thousands of new rooftops arrive before yesterday's inventory has found a buyer. For years, most drivers on Interstate 80 passed straight through Dixon without giving it a second thought. It was a quiet farming community surrounded by orchards and alfalfa fields, known far more for the annual Dixon May Fair than for its housing market. Then, Northern California home prices took off, Builders searching for affordable land within commuting distance of both Sacramento and the Bay Area found exactly what they needed, and subdivision after subdivision gradually replaced farmland, quietly turning Dixon into one of the region's fastest-growing suburbs. Today, that same expansion is running into a very different market. Zillow estimates the typical Dixon home is worth about $582,000, down roughly 3.8% over the past year, while nearby Davis and Vacaville have also seen meaningful price declines. That matters more than it might seem. Buyers aren't comparing homes inside Dixon anymore. They're shopping across the entire Interstate 80 corridor, giving them far more negotiating power than sellers enjoyed just a few years ago. Builders know exactly how to respond in that environment. Lower mortgage rates, covered closing costs, and expensive upgrade packages help keep new homes moving. But every incentive makes life even harder for homeowners trying to compete with a professional sales office. Dixon still offers real advantages, from its historic downtown and direct freeway access to nearby jobs connected to UC Davis and Sacramento. But every new neighborhood depends on demand keeping pace with construction, and right now, finished homes are staying on the market much longer than many builders originally expected. Very few master-planned communities in California are being built on the scale of Rancho Mission Viejo, spread across thousands of acres of historic ranch land in southern Orange County. It's one of the last places where an entirely new suburb is still taking shape from the ground up. Neighborhoods like Sendero, Essentia, and Rienda continue expanding toward an eventual build-out of nearly 14,000 homes, complete with resort-style pools, fitness centers, parks, and miles of hiking trails that help justify some of Orange County's premium home prices. But even communities this desirable aren't immune to today's housing slowdown. Zillow estimates home values here have slipped about 1.9% over the past year, not because buyers disappeared, but because every newly released phase competes directly against homeowners who bought into earlier phases of the very same development. When buyers are choosing between two nearly identical homes, the better financial package usually wins. Builders can offer lower mortgage rates, covered closing costs, upgraded interiors, and landscaping packages, advantages that individual resale sellers simply can't compete with. Rancho Mission Viejo still ranks among California's most sought-after master-planned communities, supported by highly rated schools, modern amenities, and Orange County's strong employment base. But its greatest strength has also become one of its biggest challenges. As long as construction continues, resale homeowners aren't just competing with their neighbors, they're competing with the very builder that created the community in the first place, keeping brand new inventory flowing year after year. American Canyon has one advantage built right into its address. Napa County, sitting just north of Vallejo along Highway 29, it's the gateway to wine country, giving buyers a Napa address without the price tag of Napa Valley. Developers saw that opportunity years ago and steadily turned open land into modern subdivisions for Bay Area commuters and growing families who wanted newer homes within reach of San Francisco and the North Bay. For years, that formula worked, but the market has tightened and the numbers are starting to show it. Zillow now puts the typical American Canyon home at roughly $730,000, down about 2.1% over the past year. That's not a dramatic drop, but buyers are looking at a very different equation now. Commute times, monthly payments, and financing incentives can matter just as much as the Napa County name, especially after years of rapid California price growth. And builders still bringing new homes to American Canyon are facing a buyer who's noticeably more cautious than the one they were selling to just a few years ago. American Canyon still has freeway access, wineries nearby, and connections to jobs across the Bay Area and Solano County, but when more finished homes compete for the same buyers, the balance shifts, and buyers know they have more leverage than before. Few Bay Area suburbs have transformed as dramatically as Dublin over the last 15 years. What was once a relatively quiet Tri-Valley town took off after BART expanded, and tech hiring pushed thousands of professionals east, looking for more space at prices Silicon Valley could no longer offer. As development spread east of Tasajara Road, entire districts filled with modern subdivisions, turning Dublin into one of Northern California's fastest-growing suburban markets. But that same wave of recent construction is creating a very different problem now. Zillow puts Dublin's home values down roughly 2.4% over the past year, while nearby Danville has pulled back even further. And because so much of eastern Dublin was built within a relatively short window, dozens of nearly identical floor plans can now hit the resale market at the same time, giving buyers an unusually large menu of choices. Builders adding another phase only intensify that competition, especially when those new homes come with financing incentives that individual homeowners simply can't match. Dublin still has excellent schools, direct BART access, and strong connections to East Bay jobs. But the scarcity that once defined this market has faded as inventory has accumulated, leaving builders and resale sellers fighting harder for every buyer. Paterson calls itself the apricot capital of the world. But these days, its economy depends just as much on the logistics and warehouse boom running along Interstate 5. Over the past decade, distribution centers spread across Stanislaus County, drawing local workers and Bay Area commuters willing to accept a longer drive in exchange for dramatically cheaper housing. Builders followed that demand, turning more open land into new residential developments. That formula looked almost unstoppable during the boom when lower home prices easily outweighed the longer commute. But today's numbers tell a different story. Redfin shows Paterson's sale prices down roughly 3.5%, with price per square foot falling even further. And the pressure doesn't stop at the city limits. Zillow has Stanislaus County down close to 4.8% over the past year, adding another layer of pressure to a community that relies heavily on continued growth to keep prices moving. In a smaller market like Paterson, relatively few monthly sales can set the tone for everyone else. That means a single builder releasing a new batch of homes can influence comparable sales across the surrounding market surprisingly quickly. Paterson still offers newer homes and one of the Central Valley's more affordable paths into home ownership. But now builders and resale sellers are competing for a smaller pool of qualified buyers, and completed homes are taking longer to move than many builders expected. San Jacinto has quietly turned into one of Riverside County's biggest destinations for entry-level new construction, expanding across former open land beneath the San Jacinto Mountains. With some of Southern California's lowest price points for a brand new home. For years, the formula looked unbeatable. Cheap land let. Developers keep opening subdivisions, and families priced out of Orange County and LA willingly took on longer commutes just to own something. That same first-time buyer group is now taking the hardest hit from elevated mortgage rates. Zillow estimates the typical San Jacinto home at roughly $500,000 to $555,000, down approximately 3.9% over the past year. That's still relatively affordable by Southern California standards, but monthly payments have crept up enough to knock a chunk of buyers out of qualifying range entirely. Builders are responding by leaning hard on financing incentives to keep sales moving, which puts resale homeowners who can't match those perks at a real disadvantage. San Jacinto still delivers genuine affordability compared to the rest of the region, but the same first-time buyer pool it was built for is exactly the group getting squeezed hardest right now, and that's a tough combination for a suburb this dependent on new construction. Banning has spent years building its reputation as one of the Inland Empire's more affordable pockets, and that affordability eventually attracted large master-planned projects, including developments expected to add nearly 5,000 homes along the city's southern edge. But those communities are opening into a market that's considerably softer than when the projects were first approved. Zillow estimates the typical Banning home at roughly $413,000, about 1% lower than a year ago. Homes here are taking roughly 30 days to go pending, one of the longest timelines on this entire list. 30 days might not sound dramatic, but for a builder carrying finished inventory, every extra week can mean another week of financing costs, and that's exactly where the pressure starts showing up. Bigger mortgage incentives, price cuts, and closing cost assistance can help builders move inventory, but they also put more pressure on resale homeowners who can't compete with a national builder's balance sheet. Banning still has plenty going for it. Mountain views, freeway access, and housing costs well below much of Southern California. But when new construction keeps arriving faster than buyers can absorb it, even one of the Inland Empire's most affordable suburbs starts to shift the balance of power. The buyers have more choices, and that means they're the ones holding the leverage. Southern Ontario was once dominated by dairy farms, with thousands of acres of pasture that few people imagined would eventually become one of the biggest construction zones in the state. As the dairies disappeared and developers moved onto the land, Ontario Ranch was born, expanding into one of California's most ambitious master-planned communities, with plans ultimately calling for tens of thousands of homes. A project that large depends on steady demand year after year, but demand has cooled while construction keeps moving forward. Zillow now estimates the typical Ontario home at roughly $630,000, down about 1.2% over the past year. That decline looks small on paper, but every newly released phase can put hundreds of additional homes into a market where resale owners are already competing for a smaller pool of qualified buyers. And builders have tools individual homeowners simply don't. Mortgage rate buydowns, closing cost assistance, and upgraded finishes that can make a brand new home harder for a resale property to compete against. Ontario still has a powerful logistics economy anchored by Ontario International Airport and major freeway connections. But every time another sales office opens inside Ontario Ranch, homeowners nearby are competing with brand new inventory, backed by a national builder that can change its incentives overnight. Jurupa Valley is one of California's newest cities, officially incorporating in 2011, even though its roots as ranches and rural neighborhoods in western Riverside County go back much further. As warehouses multiplied across nearby industrial corridors and freeway access improved, developers moved in quickly, turning open land into modern subdivisions aimed at families priced out of Orange County and Los Angeles. Today, Jurupa Valley sits at the center of one of the state's biggest logistics regions, but its housing market has gotten considerably tougher. Zillow estimates the typical home here at roughly $666,000, down about 1.3% over the past year. But that number only tells part of the story, because Jurupa Valley isn't competing in a vacuum. Ontario Ranch is delivering thousands of newly finished homes just minutes away, giving buyers multiple master-planned communities to cross-shop before committing. Builders across both cities are leaning on mortgage rate cuts, appliance packages, and closing cost assistance, giving buyers considerably more negotiating power than they had just a few years ago. Jurupa Valley still offers strong freeway access and thousands of local logistics jobs, but a city that grew largely during years of rapid price appreciation inevitably feels the pressure when that growth slows, and existing homeowners are increasingly competing against builders still unloading fresh inventory across the valley. 25 years ago, Lincoln was little more than a quiet railroad town on the northern edge of Placer County, population barely above 11,000, built around ranching and a historic clay manufacturing plant. Almost nobody expected it to become one of the fastest-growing cities in the country, but that's exactly what happened as Sacramento expanded and prices climbed across Northern California. Developers poured in, turning thousands of acres of ranch land into master-planned communities, golf courses, and one of California's largest active adult developments, Sun City Lincoln Hills. The city's population has now climbed to roughly $57,000, and builders are still adding homes across neighborhoods like 12 Bridges. But that enormous supply is now running into a much cooler market. Zillow now puts the typical Lincoln home at approximately $649,000, down just 0.6% over the past year, with data through June 30th, 2026. Redfin's latest comparable figure puts the median sale price at roughly $620,000, down about 0.8%, year over year. And that changes how we should read Lincoln's competition, because this isn't simply a market where buyers choose between an old house and a new one. In communities like 12 Bridges, they can compare multiple recently built homes and current builder inventory side by side. Lincoln still offers strong schools, Sierra College nearby, and a growing suburban footprint. But builders are still releasing new homes, and move-in-ready inventory is putting another layer of competition in front of resale homeowners. Plumas Lake has lived through this story once before, which is exactly why real estate professionals keep a close eye on it today. South of Marysville in Yuba County, it was carved out of farmland during the mid-2000s boom and sold as an affordable alternative for Sacramento commuters. Thousands of buyers bought into that vision until the 2008 crash turned Plumas Lake into one of Northern California's most infamous foreclosure markets. Streets filled with nearly new homes sitting half-occupied, while values collapsed before some neighborhoods had even finished being built. The market eventually recovered. Buyers came back and developers resumed building. Now the community is facing another slowdown. Recent data puts the median list price at around $544,000, with price per square foot down roughly 5% from last year. Even more telling, the median listing now sits on the market for roughly 185 days before selling, more than 6 months. In a state where a healthy suburban market usually measures selling time in days, not months. Builders keep adding inventory while resale owners compete for the same shrinking pool of buyers, creating one of the toughest environments in California for newly completed homes right now. Plumas Lake still draws people in with its affordability and quieter pace. But its history shows exactly how vulnerable a community built around rapid new construction can become the moment buyer demand starts cooling off. Rocklin has built one of Northern California's strongest reputations for family living. Good schools, plenty of parks, and easy Sacramento access helped turn what was once a granite quarry town into one of Placer, county's fastest-growing suburbs. Developers spent 2 decades building subdivision after subdivision as thousands of families relocated from pricier parts of California, and demand held up remarkably well through most of that stretch. Even today, homes here often go pending in roughly 9 days, a pace most cities would consider exceptionally strong. But underneath that speed, prices are actually heading in the other direction. Zillow estimates the typical Rocklin home at approximately $674,000, down around 5.5% over the past year. That combination on fast sales alongside falling prices tells you something important. Buyers are still active, but they're only closing deals once sellers adjust to where the market actually sits. Builders adding fresh inventory here, backed by financing incentives, are effectively setting the ceiling for what nearby resale homes can command, and homeowners are increasingly choosing to accept a lower offer sooner rather than wait it out. Rocklin still benefits from top-rated schools, Sierra College, and a diverse Sacramento-anchored job base. But even a genuinely desirable suburb can't fully dodge a correction once years of new construction finally catch up with demand. If one suburb captures just how much California's new home market has shifted, it's Hollister. For decades, this quiet San Benito County town sold itself as one of the last affordable escapes for buyers priced out of Silicon Valley. As growth restrictions eased, developers expanded across former ranch land, betting that Bay Area workers would keep trading a longer commute for a much lower mortgage payment. And for years, that bet paid off. Here's where I have to actually correct the record, because this is where the story gets interesting. Some recent videos on this exact topic cite an 8.7% year-over-year decline in Hollister, and that number was accurate a few months ago. But after checking Zillow's data through June 2026, Hollister's decline has narrowed dramatically to somewhere between 0.9% and 1.7%, while Redfin's numbers show prices climbing 5.1% year-over-year as of March 2026, with homes selling faster than they were a year earlier. That's a genuinely important update. Hollister isn't the steepest decline on this list anymore. Instead, it's becoming one of the clearest signs of a market finding its floor and starting to bounce back. It still offers small-town charm, nearby Pinnacles National Park, and housing that's cheaper than most of Santa Clara County. And it's proof that even a suburb hit hard by the new construction wave doesn't necessarily stay down for long. These markets adjust. They don't just collapse and stay collapsed.